Hello and welcome to this latest edition of the Predictive AI World Forum over here at SalesChoice. I'm your host, as always, Melik Demirel, Chief Growth and Operations Officer at the company, and I'm joined, as always, by Dr. Cindy Gordon, CEO and founder at SalesChoice. Today, we have a very different dimension to our conversation, a much needed one and a refreshingly novel take on textiles. But before I introduce my host and go into details, a quick word about the Predictive World Forum. This is a platform on which we have hosted numerous industry experts and had conversations around AI in sales primarily, but also anything that's foundational and crucial with regards to our future when it comes to the deployment of new technology. You can visit our website at saleschoice.com/resources. You'll find tons of webinars, podcasts such as this one, and other videos and helpful content that you can learn from. All right, with that coming to the here and now. So we are joined today by Professor Melik Demirel. He's the Lloyd and Dohorty Huck Chair in Biomimetic Materials at Penn State University. He's also founded a climate tech company for decarbonizing textiles. It's called Tandem Repeat, and as many of us know, one of the biggest fallouts of fast fashion has been the unfortunate microplastics that have entered our ecosystem, including our food chains. Well, there are solutions that are being tried, and Professor Demirel has something quite unique to share with us today. But before we get into those details, let me invite him to say hello. Professor?
Hello, thanks for the invitation.
Well, we are lucky to have you over here, and thank you for sharing your time with us. Now, to carry on our discussion, I would like to bring Cindy's voice in to initiate. And of course, I'll go on mute. I'll be back again before the end. So, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Malay and Melik. It's great to see you. I know it's later in the day for you over in Europe, and we're just thrilled to have you. When I had the chance to kind of dive into your story, I was curious and where the inspiration came from, because, squid's being used to create new products. So how did it start? Like, what was the inspiration and how did this come to be? Was it through your research at academia, or are you the first squid, innovator in fashion in the world? So I'd love to hear the story.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. So the squid story started almost much before me, of course, almost a century ago. There was a scientist who wrote a book on squid anatomy in 1910 at Woods Hole Marine Biology, and it was talking about the structure of the invertebrate animal. Basically, squid doesn't have any bones, and it has this very unique nail-like, but it's called a squid ring teeth. Although it's not teeth, but it's the nail-like suction cups which contain this protein. And up until 1970s, people didn't understand, the structure of it. Even they thought it's a sugar molecule, it's not a protein. So two zoologists in England started working on it and identified structure and so on. And then over the years, there was a couple of groups that started looking at it in detail, analyzing its protein content and so on. We collaborated with one of these groups early on. And then around like 2011, I submit a proposal to the government and requested to go and collect squid species around the world. And we collected 6 different squid species. There are 350 different squid species in the world. And we collected 6 of them and start analyzing them, genomically. What we discovered is it's very interesting, unique architecture, similar to silk, but it is water resistant. So, then it amazed us and we said, can we make this thing in the lab? And one of the amazing technology coming from fermentation and industrial biotechnology is you can produce these materials, these proteins, in the bacteria, in the yeast, and other organisms that are commonly used. So that's the starting point of the whole story.
It's fascinating when you think about it, but also the issues that we have that Malay also highlighted at the beginning with our our plastics. And the fact, I know when we did the story, you know, you mentioned so much of that comes from our own clothing when we're washing, and then it goes back into, you know, our dear water areas. I'd love to, I think it's important for our viewers to understand where you at in your manufacturing process and what products you're actually producing, right? Because this is very much a disintermediation play, and a good one. So let's hear about the product, where you're at with fashion. Can I buy some of these things? Is it swimwear? Is it going to be, you know, Lululemon? I'm going to have that all sort of done because I've got lots of their clothing here in Athletica, but I'd love to just get a sense of, you know, the product story, what it is, and the manufacturing, and where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So the story is actually as old as more than 10 years, a decade. So we started with tiny milligrams, micrograms amount of the protein. When you think about protein, people think that like it's like a food. In fact, squids, calamari is a very tasty food, right? So, but you know, when it comes to the fashion, it's basically thinking about like how to make you know, fibers out of this protein. And in fact, you know, your hair is protein, your skin is protein, silk as a fiber is a protein, wool is a keratin, it's a protein, and so forth. And the textile industry has known, you know, the protein-based like silk and so on for over a couple of millennia, right? So, and what's interesting is how can you engineer this protein is the key aspect that we were looking into. And as I said, starting from very small amounts, when we scaled up the production to kilograms, we decided, okay, this should now go to the a spin-off company, and that's exactly where we started 5 years ago. Today, we are lucky to have, you know, this clothes that we made that I can show it to you. At this point, they are not up for sale. This is a cotton blend. So we made a cotton squid blend, and the reason that we made a cotton squid blend is because, you know, we wanted to make sure that these products are affordable, because the cost is one of the key issues. But you know, we are trying to reduce that, we are trying to scale this up, and hopefully you will see this on the market within the next couple of years.
Oh, it's wonderful. Is there going to be water resistance, like you were talking about the squid and its texture? So are the products water resistant, or is it just the fact that the fibers are so strong?
Yeah, so there are going to be very interesting, very unique properties. Water resistant could be one of them, but we're also excited to see self-healing, self-repair. So, you know, one of the key unique properties that we discovered in the squid is it is self-healing ability. Think about it, when it attacks the prey, let's say fish, so the teeth can break, the nails can break, right? So the beautiful part of this animal is trying to self-heal is our biggest discovery on this domain. So my lab discovered that you know, studied in detail about this property. So we can bring that to the, for example, say denim area, right? So where you can have a better performance, higher resistance of rubbing and, you know, wear and tear resistance and so forth. And it could be used in advanced textiles as well. Other areas is like thermal. This material turned out to be a very unique thermal conductivity, where think about a runner where it can you know, change its thermal conductivity when you sweat by 5 times. We published this work in high impact journals, and you know, now we are trying to also push this into the markets.
Fascinating. You must be having a blast. So I know, you know, I mainly write about AI, and that's what our company does. So you're gonna have to share with me, where does AI come into the analytics, protein, you know, insights? So I'd love to hear how the AI model has been developed and what methods you're using.
Yeah, fantastic. So we use AI in different aspects of it. So the starting point is the design of these proteins. Starting 1970s, 80s, people worked on understanding molecular architecture of proteins, from, you know, very simple albumin protein in your blood to very complex proteins, you know, that makes your that replicates your DNA and so on. So the protein data bank has been, you know, a major source for accumulating this data. In the last decades, AI researchers started to look at this database and started to learn how these structures are categorized. And now, these days, you can enter a new sequence, and that sequence can predict you a three-dimensional molecular architecture, which is extremely important because it can relate to its dynamics, its physical properties, and so forth. So that's where we use some of the early AI tools. But there's also one thing quite interesting is our material forming proteins are very different than your conventional globular proteins like albumin or other proteins. So the algorithms are still exploring new dimensions into this so-called fibrous or structural proteins, but also going out of the protein domain and looking into the fashion. So now you make these fibers. And you can create an avatar, for example, that can fit. When you go buy e-commerce online, people typically cannot fit the right dress, so they return the dress, and that's a loss. And there are lots of algorithms that are being developed to make sure that that is minimized, so the return is minimized, and also the fit, right? You want to see. When you go to a shop, when you go to the store, you can try things, but if you are buying online, there is no opportunity to try these things. So the avatars and all these very unique, algorithms that can immediately predict your size, and then they can actually fit or look for what you're interested to buy based on your, background of purchases. These are very interesting areas. The detailed algorithms that we are interested also includes physical algorithms, physics-based AI. So this is very unique because you can work backwards. You can say that I wanted to have, let's say, anti-wicking properties or self-healing properties, or I want to have, thermal properties with this thermal conductivity and so forth. Can you go back and create me the right genomic sequence, the right genes that can predict this material properties? Is actually the cutting edge. So this is exactly where we are right now.
This is so fascinating. How mature do you think the industry is, Melik, in the sense, obviously everybody's concerned with, the decomposition of plastic in our oceans and the implications it's having on all of the ecosystems, right? When you get into the whole value chain, you realize how complex it is in actually solving and eradicating plastic. So are you starting to see that the fashion industry is really being bold and brave and trying to advance these kind of innovations and embrace the kinds of things you're doing? I just try and get a sense of the industry and the speed that you see that that industry is maturing, right? Because it takes the buyers and the sellers and government regulations, all those types of things to really align quickly.
Absolutely. So let's start with the government regulations. Especially the European Union is pushing for new regulations against plastics and microplastics. And for the audience, the microplastics are very tiny, small pieces. They are much worse than the big pieces of plastics because they go and kill planktons. Planktons are basically the lungs of the ocean. So if you kill them, you will kill the oxygens in the whole oceans. And this plastics actually is accumulated from washing clothes that include like polyester, nylon, and so forth. And you can see them when you dry your clothes. If you take off the filter, you see this lint, and they contain the microplastic pollutions. You can make some filters and so on, but there is still not a very good method to eliminate that. From my perspective, it's better to go back to nature, right? So think about today, there is 110 million tons of fiber making, polyester, nylon, the synthetics, 25 million coming from basically the cotton. But in order to grow cotton, you need like 8,000 liters of water for 1 kilogram of cotton. It's an amazing amount. And you need large areas to put this. It's competing with the food. So, how can you go back and create natural or natural-like, fibers that could help to solve some of this problem is what we were proposing. Of course, there are other companies which is trying to do, similar work, in the sense that, protein, cellulosics, and other natural fiber markets. But I think there is space for everyone in this domain, because the numbers are immense, because we are talking about a $3 trillion economy. $3 trillion economy.
In terms of the plastic pollution, is a $3 trillion.
$3 trillion economy is the fashion industry.
Fashion industry.
I'm not even talking about the packaging and other industries that affect plastics. So they are also a couple of $1 trillion chemical industry, that they are huge. So, if you consider, anything beyond the fashion industry, so now we are talking about a huge carbon footprint, a huge energy usage. Just to give you an idea, if you visit a polyester factory that's making this, products, they are made at 400 Celsius. It's really a hot oven, super hot oven inside. So, the biology offers you a room temperature. So the carbon footprint is minimal. The water usage is minimal. The energy usage is minimal. So there is a beautiful solution that we can provide.
It's such a refreshing story of a company making a difference, right? We just, like, to your point, there's so many opportunities for all of us to start really embracing, your point about the plankton. I know I recently watched a documentary on the implications of plankton erosion on the whales, right? And like you said, your analogy that it's the fuel for the ocean, or the lungs, I think, is even a better metaphor. Are there other players building out squid protein innovations, or Melik, would you say that that's a very, relatively unique area, and other people are trying other protein methods? But any sense there on the competitive landscape, other visionaries innovating with squid protein? I just trying to get a sense of the market a little bit.
Absolutely. So if you look at the squid, of course, there's lots of new researchers in the domain and the academic side. But as far as I know, we are the only company Tandem Repeat is the only company who is making squid-based SquidX fibers. But there are competitors. There's actually, if you look at this natural fiber market, there's almost like 50 different companies which is doing different parts of the work. So in the category that we are in, there are other recombinant silk companies, which the silk research came almost like a couple of decades before the squid research. Therefore, the transition to the markets was much earlier than that. But there's also recycling companies, which are quite interesting to use to recycle the cotton, recycle the polyester, recycle the nylon, and so forth. There are companies that are trying to make new fibers out of, let's say, cellulose and bacterial cellulose, instead of depending on the wood. So you can get the cellulose out of the bacteria. There's also companies who are interested in, trying to come up with new biopolymers and so forth. Overall, I think the market is getting bigger and bigger, and there's a huge demand market pool on this thing, because the sustainability is a big key aspect of this thing. But there's also a need for alternative feedstock, to create these materials, because we cannot rely on oil, we cannot rely on plastics. We have to come up with materials that are smart, and SquidX is providing that.
Yeah. It's just it's so exciting. I've got all these ideas going in the fashion design side for consideration. Obviously, a lot has gone on in the sense of the research validation, getting the strength into the product that you're developing, obviously starting to talk with different stakeholders, manufacturing. But what are sort of the next, commercialization steps in your journey? Are you at the point now where you need more capital? Do you need more, you identifying your manufacturing facilities? Like, just try and give us a sense of sort of over the next, 3 or 4 key milestones in your journey that, you're really focused on. And just so that, anybody listening in, they may have some ideas. I know I've got some other thoughts but we'd just love to hear where you're at.
Yeah, when we started this journey, our biggest concern was to make this protein. So when we made enough protein, the biggest concern become, can we make fibers out of it? And we started to learn the whole process, because going from the powder, protein powder, to a fiber required multiple steps. And then it doesn't stop there, because you have to use, although conventional machines like weaving, knitting, and so forth, at the end of the day, you are moving into a fashion world, which is very different than our academic world, right? So because the rules are quite different. So the fundamental thing that we are trying to do, as any other deep tech company does, is how we can scale up, right? How we can take our materials from tens of kilograms to tens of thousands of tons, right? So because a fiber that's being produced at the scale at least requires 20 to 50,000 tons. So this is an immense amount, and the capital expenses that require this kind of work is a big check, right? So the capital expense is big. So, but on the other hand, there is also you have to learn how to penetrate into the market. Typically, for deep tech companies, there is classical two pathways. One is like you can directly sell to the customer, where marketing and the sales points become extremely interesting, because people might be interested to buy sustainable clothes, but they don't want to pay more, right? So although the recent reports with the new gen, X gen, and so on, they're showing that they can at least afford a little bit higher prices, but still not like 10x, right? So maybe 1.5x and so on is reasonable, but not 10x, right? How to bring the cost down is a major challenge. So, and therefore, in the D2C channels, you have to be very, very, concerned about the cost. And that's why you have to find the beachhead markets that you can penetrate. And so this has been the biggest challenge in this domain. On the other hand, there's also the brand issue, right? B2B. So, so instead of going directly to the customer, you can go and work with fashion companies. In fact, there are lots of them. There are big ones which run annual revenue of hundreds of millions dollars, hundreds of billion dollars. As I mentioned earlier, this is a huge $3 trillion market. And luxury is very, at the high end of these things. In fact, you can divide the whole fashion industry to really an up, like high fashion, and then there is the middle section, and then lower, and then the bottom sections, and so forth. So if you want to work with the brands, the key issue becomes, their standards. So you cannot bypass their standard. And as a startup company, while you are changing your products, so you make a lot of mistakes, but these mistakes are not affordable by the big brands, because recall cost of any product is gigantic, right? It's huge price. So that becomes a challenge. So therefore, bringing cash, investor money into this side of the problem becomes a key issue. So now, on one hand, you want to go to the D2C. On the other hand, you want to do B2B, and how to play this game becomes a problem which is way beyond your technical and academic skills.
Well, I'll look forward to another conversation there. But you're right. You need to really look at the whole execution pathway and have the funding so you can prove out the model, right, and optimize it for scale. Complex, but I'm sure with your brilliance, you'll find a way. Like most founders in the journey, and if you reflect, are there any key points that you can share with other founders that are striving to very much, ensure that we have a healthier planet? Things that you've learned along the way that just kind of continue to get you up in the morning and say, you know what, here's some key insights, and if you could pass those along, because we always try to share learnings for other founders in the AI community.
Absolutely. So I think one of the key points that I learned when I started Tandem is the very basic definition of a team building. So, a company by definition are people, right? So you have to think about, you have to choose the right co-founders. You have to choose the people that you are comfortable work with. And I've been extremely lucky actually to have people around me, my CEO, my CTO, and all other people that's around me, my operational guys and so on. So they are fantastic people. I find that we all agree on, the fundamental point of the starting point of this company is the climate. We care about the climate, we care about sustainability, we care about nature. This is more important than, anything else that we think about on our company. Then, it's always important to look for, as I said, you need the investment, but sometimes it's very difficult to explain this problems to the investors because, if the investor is not hungry for a deep tech, which is the 99% of the time, that's the case. In fact, there was a recent report which said that there's only 1% of the whole investor community that's interested in the deep tech. But because the deep tech takes time, like it takes 5 years, 6 years, 7 years time, and you have to have patient investors. So people who are working on this domain, I think, should realize that this is going to be a long journey, and you have to explain your problem carefully to the investor so that they can get it. But you have to also understand the whole dynamics of it. As I mentioned earlier, whether you are going B2C or B2B or D2C type of market models. So you have to understand that. And as most of the founders who are coming from the technical backgrounds, this becomes a big challenge. So finally, I would like to tell everyone that you have to be passionate about, what you're doing, about, the fundamental thing of do what you like what you do. In fact, we hired a fantastic, intern a couple of years ago to the company, and he said, "You guys are very excited about your technical solutions, but how about social solutions?" And that was a really a very interesting turning point for me, because I realized that we are paying lots of attention to the technical solutions, but we are not paying attention to the social solutions. In fact, at the bottom of the social problem of, pollution and basically poverty, they cross, because mobility for communities that are not, financially doing well, also are exposed more to the pollution. So that social problem is actually extremely interesting and extremely important to help understand and eventually to solve.
Yeah, for sure. Like with the number of, if you look at the erosion in the South Pacific, right, with the fish, and in Asia in particular, right, where the Japanese consume incredible amounts of fish or then export, and you can see the decline, and a lot of it's to some of the erosion that we're having, and what's happened in the Great Barrier Reef, and one of the reasons the squid population's exploding is because the temperature has been increasing. It's just a fascinating story, Melik. I'm just so honored to meet you, to hear your wisdom. We're here for you, and just I know that our viewers will really enjoy learning more about Tandem Repeat, and hopefully they'll follow you in your journey. But we look forward to getting this out, and then more coverage as well with the video on Forbes. But thank you for spending the time. I'll turn it back to my partner, Malay. Malay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Malay?
I am. Sorry, I was on mute. All right. Well, thank you for that discussion. And I know the time was short. We normally do it for much longer. And it's quite an irony that the best topic of the day had to be cut short in there. But we hope we have a chance to continue our discussions. And in the meantime, Professor, thank you for sharing all your points, especially the part around having to be passionate about what you're doing and what you care about. And it's really nice to hear something tangible that's being done in this space. It's been long overdue. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. to our audience, I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as we did. We always endeavor to bring you something new, something unheard of, and I hope we have done that today as well. We wish Tandem repeat the very best in the future. We all know we need companies like this one. You can, of course, check out more details about this company at tandemrepeat.com. And of course, Professor Demirel can be reached out on LinkedIn or her email at the details shown on your screen. With that, we now come to a conclusion of our session today. Once again, I would invite you to visit saleschoice.com/resources. That's where you'll find all our previous discussions, as well as this one, which will be up soon. And you can always reach out to us on the website itself. Cindy and I are always keen to hear from you and hear your thoughts. And of course, see if we can have you on our channel as well. We'd love to have a chat. So with that, thank you so much, Professor Demirel. Cindy and I thoroughly enjoyed, as I'm sure will our audience, and we hope to continue our conversation. I hope you enjoyed being here with us as well and sharing your story.
Thank you for the invitation. That was great.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will now end the session. Stay happy, stay productive, everyone, and bye-bye.